Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. So let's start this video from the positive news. Yesterday there was the Storm Shadow or ATACMS strike on the Russian air defense positions in the Kursk region. So Ukraine was able to hit this radar system S-400. So far it's the best air defense equipment the Russian Federation has. They deployed the station in the Kursk region to shut down Ukrainian airplanes, which as we saw many times before really helped the Ukrainian army to gain positions at the beginning of the Kursk operation. And as it is reported now, there are some of the air sirens in the Kursk region again this night. The local Telegram channels report that a missile threat has been declared in the Kursk region. The Russian air defense is in operation. Previously, the enemy, so Ukraine, launched Western-made missiles like Storm Shadow or ATACMS. And something interesting is happening in Kaluga this night. As you can see, the Russian oil refinery is on fire. Yep, it's the Russian oil storage with the refinery capability. Now it looks something like that, and also there was the report that Ukraine hit the Russian military facility, which is the part of the Russian industrial complex. The facility was used to produce some certain shells for the Russian army, but what kind of, I'm out of clue for now. The official Russian media reports that Ukraine used the Western missiles again on the Russian territory, including Storm Shadow and probably ATACMS. All of the missiles were intercepted by the Russian air defense, however, some of the debris hit the critical infrastructure. Yeah, we see how they beautifully intercept the missiles. Well done, Russia, well done. But at the same time, Ukrainian channels report about the massive attack of the Russian drones on Ukrainian territory. More than 100 drones were spotted already this night. The priority target of Russia is the capital city of Kiev as usual, and there was the operation of the air defense reported as well. So both of the sides actually strike each other almost every night. As usual, the Ukrainian side is using the Luti drones for the long-range strikes. Those are, I would say, less capable compared to the Shahid drones after all, because they require the runway for takeoff. Also, according to my information, they carry less payload, so less TNT on their flight. However, the range of the Luti drone is comparable to Shahid. The main problem with this drone that Ukraine is unable to produce it massively as Russia, for example, produces Shahids. And I think that for Russia producing Shahid, or as they call it Giran, is less expensive than for Ukraine to produce Luti, if we speak about the production cost of the single unit. My friends, if you want to support the job that I do here almost daily, you may join my Patreon page. It is available with my personal link in the video description right below. Thank you so much for maintaining my motivation. And now to the military map review. Unfortunately, for the last couple of days, Russia moved quite a lot in Kurakhove direction. The major change, I would say, happened in all of those villages where Russia get the ground and some of the villages under their control already. So after Russia advanced towards Romanivka in this area, Ukraine started to withdraw the forces from this region. So without the resistance, the Russians just fled into Ilinka and Yelizavetovka village, and for now it is like that. But from my information, this is no longer a gray zone. This part is occupied by Russians already, so all of those three villages. And if you check this 3D map, you may see how Russia advanced towards this area. Well, they say that Romanivka is not yet occupied, however, Russians went into this village, but Yelizavetovka and Ilyinka occupied. Well, I do expect the further withdrawal of the Ukrainian armed forces because Russia intensified their attacks from Darne and from this side. They want to trap Ukrainian forces in this region. And this bottleneck is just 4 kilometers wide, so Ukraine should continue to withdraw the forces, as I said to you around 5 days ago. The main idea for Ukraine is to leave the ground and to cause Russia severe losses upon their assaults, using mortars, artillery and FPV drones. Okay, the same confirmation we have from the Miko Scientist 3. By the way, my friends, all the links for the original sources I put in the video description just below, just to mention the author of those military maps. So we may see the fast offensive of the Russian army towards Romanivka. That's why Ukraine withdrew the forces, and there were no defense lines built. As you can see, the only defense line is over here, but for Russia it was actually easy to penetrate it in this region. They didn't fill it, I guess. because I didn't see that they stopped before the defense line for the long-term fight. So I predict that the next week Ukraine will leave this entire area, and probably Russia will also assault deeply into Kurakhove, occupying at least the half of the settlement. We may also see that Russia advances quite fast in this region towards Velika Novosilka. The fights are ongoing in the settlement, I guess, already. Rozdona village is in a gray zone fully, so Russians obviously cut this road, so Ukraine is unable to use it for supplies. The only safe way to transport the goods to Velika Novosilka is over here, but at the same time it's also not far away from the edge of the front lines here. So every road, I would say, is not that safe after all, because everything is very close to the Russian positions. Well, the good thing in Velika Novosilka that there is quite a big river ongoing through this settlement, and even if Russia advances over here, they need quite a lot of the resources to cross the river. And for the last couple of days, Russia started to go to the northwest direction from Selidove towards this direction. So let's check out. It was the day before yesterday and today. We clearly see that they want to expand this bridgehead, and their goal is to go from this direction towards north, and also from this area towards north as well. They want to advance with their class tactics to occupy Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, and they want to make it very soon before the January the 20th, because many of the mainstream media continue to say that there could be some sort of the peace talks, so Russia wants to get the better position for the future talks. Well, talks may start to happen, but the main idea for Russia is to occupy Ukraine no matter what, in what way, in a military or diplomatic. The best scenario for Russia could be to freeze the war and cause the internal conflict within the Ukrainian society, to cause some of the riots and change of the government to the Russian puppet one. Or as it was done, for example, by Russia in Georgia, where they bribed lots of the politicians, they've created the pro-Russian party, and that's how they've took the power with their puppet government. The government that cancelled the Western development vector for Georgia. So it became again the Russian slave state, but as we know, people do not like that stuff, that's why they protest sometimes. The second preferable scenario for Russia is to freeze the war, but accumulate enough forces to break the Ukrainian front lines in the future. But not in the far future, they may do it in a couple of years. Because Putin, after all, is not a young person, and his ambitions are very high, so he wants to occupy Ukraine until he is alive. While he is still alive, he wants to make a Russian history by gathering the ground and rebuilding the new Russian Empire. And Ukraine for him is just a battlefield. His main enemy is the West with democratic values. Sadly, still, the vast part of the Western politicians do not understand that. They think that it's some sort of the local conflict between the Russian-speaking group and the Ukrainian-speaking, which tends to unite to Russia and the Ukrainian-speaking territory. Yeah, we're gonna speak about it later in this video. Well, let's go back to the military map update. We have the situation not far away from the Kupiansk, where Russia actually crossed the Oskil River. The deep state military map source confirms that. Well, not yet with their latest map update over here, but they wrote it on their Telegram channel. So according to the deep state, Russians crossed the river of Oskil in this place. Whether they will be capable to create a bridgehead on the other shore, well, we'll see. For now, they use the forest to hide their groups. Russians are out trying to assault using the small forces on all-terrain vehicles, for example, as in this case. This drone image was taken in the Kursk region, and the Russian convoy from ATVs was ambushed by the FPV drones. I'll share it on my Telegram group for more details, but you know, miraculously Ukraine was able to get more ground in the Kursk region. So this is the new area where Ukraine advanced recently for the last 24 hours. So even though Russia counterattacked the Ukrainian positions, Ukraine sometimes may take the initiative and propel forward even in Kursk, where Russia concentrated nearly 50,000 of the troops, and according to Zelensky, Putin's plan is to push Ukrainian forces out to its territory from the Kursk region in the next couple of months. But judging on the very slow pace of the Russian army movement in Kursk, I don't think that it is real. About the Russian ballistic missile case, which happened 3 days ago in Dnipro, as we know for now it's the middle-range missile, and the Russian side confirms that, so after all it's not the ICBM. Nevertheless, this missile is able to reach any point in Europe. Well, I would say that those parts are in the real terrible state, so I don't think that our Western colleagues may take something from that. Well, we'll see. According to the last information, Russians even didn't use their TNT shells. Inside there were just heavy dummies which were flying with a high speed, really high speed. And that's why we saw the flashes in the sky, and the damage caused to Dnipro city is just minor. Russia really launched the missile on Yuzhmash factory. And in their propaganda media they say that they completely destroyed the production of the Ukrainian missiles which was done over there. But you know, if we check out the recent photos of the factory, nothing is destroyed there, everything as it was. By the way, Russia may reach the same factory in Dnipro city using their standard Iskander missiles, but instead they used their longer range ballistic missile, which cost at least $80 million. Why did they do it? Well, they played this role of the crazy bully that they're up to start the Third World War, but honestly, nope. And we see how some of the Western influencers, like for example Joe Rogan, fell into that Russian propaganda, and they continue to spread the same Russian narratives themselves. Let's listen to this video.
What I don't feel safer is right now they're launching missiles into Russia.
Yeah.
How are you allowed to do that when you're on the way out? Like, the people don't want you to be there anymore. This should be like some sort of a pause for like significant actions that could potentially start World War III. Maybe that would be a good thing that we would like to avoid from a dying former president.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing is nuts.
I mean, look, I don't know shit about politics.
Zelensky says Putin is terrified. Fuck you, man. Fuck you people. You fucking people are about to start World War III.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Russia fired a missile today.
They fired an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time ever. It's the first time one of those has ever been used.
That's insanity.
Fucking insanity, because those intercontinental ballistic missiles can have nukes on them. This one didn't, but if it does, the whole world changes. And it changes because of the military-industrial complex, and it changes because of the money that's going to Ukraine, and it changes because the outgoing president or whoever the fuck is actually running the country has decided to do something fucking insane.
I didn't expect that harsh rhetorics towards Ukrainian side, and also towards the own industrial complex of the United States of America. So those guys still believe that Putin may start the Third World War. The same Putin that does surgeries, who has many of the castles inside Russia, who wants to live as a Tsar. He actually lives a king's life after all. So they really think that he wants to finish everything of that? And all of the Russian corrupt oligarchs? Come on. So they're not blaming the Russian side, Putin, for invading Ukraine. They blame Ukrainian side for escalation. At the same time, Putin may escalate at any moment. That's what he does, because he has his military-industrial complex working. And Russia still has unique tools like strategic bombers, many of the cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, to hit Ukraine almost every day, but then Ukraine got the permission to hit the Russian infrastructure. Oh, that's escalation. You know, it's kind of funny that so-called American patriots blame their own military, their own president, whatever party he presents. I remember how they got angry about the defund police case. Well, I also do not support the defund of police. I think that police should be there, well sponsored and maintained. But at the same time, those patriots really want to defund their own military complex, which is, I guess, not a patriotic thing, because the vast part of the funds for the military support of Ukraine actually goes to upgrade the military complex of the United States of America. Also, Joe Rogan mentioned a specific missile which was used by Russia recently, which is able to carry a nuclear warhead. Wow! And that would end the world if that missile had a nuclear warhead. But you know what, Joe Rogan? The other tools which Russia uses against Ukraine for a very, very long period of time also may carry nuclear warheads, like Caliber cruise missiles, the cruise missiles which they launch from their strategic bombers, Kinjal missiles, Iskander missiles, all of that may carry nuclear warheads. Moreover, Russia used already a dummy nuclear warhead in their cruise missiles back in 2022. Yes, they launched the cruise missile with just this load, no TNT shell, nothing which simulates a nuclear warhead. But by that time, no one was speaking about the tools which Russia has to deliver nuclear warheads elsewhere. Only now it started to be something really terrible, and who to blame? Ukraine and the United States Army plus the United States President. It's the most dumb-ass conclusion that you may take from it. But Joe Rogan managed it. He continued to spread the pure Russian propaganda. He continued to threaten and frighten Americans. That it's better to defund Ukraine, defund their own military complex, not escalate and let Russia just to do its job occupying Ukraine, because who cares about Ukraine? You know, we are here in America across the ocean, but next time don't complain rude because of that. So you should take the proactive action to conquer autocracies, otherwise it's no-go scenario. About Joe Rogan's personality, I have my own opinion about this guy, but I will not share it on YouTube because YouTube has its own censorship. Alright, something is happening with the Russian airplane in Antalya airport of Turkey. This is the Russian Sukhoi Superjet 100 passenger airplane which somehow got fire. And here is the video, definitely a Russian Sukhoi Superjet. The passengers are being evacuated, so everything went normal for them. That's why I'm a little joking about it. Yeah, somehow the Russian Superjets tend to burst into flames, and what caused that fire in the middle of the apron, well, so far no one may say by 100%, but I guess that it was the Russian-made engine. The airplane is equipped with the jet engine SAM-146 made by joint company of the French Safran and the Russian NPO Saturn. But you may exclude the French company now. Russia makes the engines on its own on Saturn factory, as well as they do the maintenance over there, and they're in lack of the spare parts produced by the French company, and because of the sanctions, Safran is not able to take part in this cooperation any longer. So my guess that it happened during the engine start, some of the fuel spilled and ignited, that caused the fire. Well, I just guess that it could be one of the most probable reasons for this accident. Sukhoi Superjet has one of the worst records of the aviation accidents in the modern aviation history. If we speak about the new generation of the aircraft produced, there are 3 of the major accidents with a human life loss and many more with the damage caused to the airplane. Today's case is one of those. Judging on the number of the airplanes produced, and it is nearly 200 of the airplanes, it's not a lot. This statistics is terrible. Yeah, people would say that, Dennis, you know about the Boeing 737, but guys, the number of the Boeing 737s produced, it is just enormous, and according to statistics, it's even safer than Airbus A320. Yes, with all of those cases, because simply they fly a lot. Here, not that many flights, but accidents continue to happen with the Russian Sukhoi Superjet, and they will continue to happen also with Boeing, Airbus, which fly in Russia, because Russia is unable to maintain those. I think for the International Aviation Organization, it is better to isolate the Russian statistics for the aviation accidents, because simply they cannot maintain their airplanes. And also, guys, I guess it was a terrible idea for Russians to fly to Turkey today, because this day 9 years ago, back in 2015, Turkey shot down the Russian airplane Sukhoi 24 with the help of the 2 F-16s. It was a big scandal. By the time Russia cancelled all of the flights of their passenger airplanes to Turkey, there were even some of the sanctions introduced, but after Russia opened everything and released the sanctions, and they tried to forget about this stuff. Let's continue to other news. The Economist says that there could be one more Russian assault in Zaporizhia region. Well, actually mainstream media say about it for a long time already, at least for 1 month. Well, according to my information, Russia sends the forces from Zaporizhia to Donetsk, actually, some part of the forces. Donetsk direction is still priority for them, however, they managed to get around 30,000 troops in Zaporizhia, so they may attack there as well, but that strike will not be a major one. Or would be, it's better to say, because we're not 100% sure that they will start that attack. For Russia, the Zaporizhia direction is very difficult because there actually Ukraine built the defense lines. Unlike the Donetsk region, Zaporizhia is more secure, much more secure, and 30,000 troops is not enough to break the Ukrainian defense into the Zaporizhia city. If I was the part of the jury of the nomination of the Darwin Award, I would give all of my points to this guy and to those guys on a vehicle. Yep, those are Russians. So they are somewhere maybe in Kursk, maybe in occupied territory of Ukraine, but this guy is the Russian sapper, so the guy is responsible for the mining of the territory. So their idea is to demine all of the mines which were placed on this road, and one colleague who is filming the video calls to his friend to stop the Russian car going to their direction because they were not on time to demine all of the mines, and there was no coordination between them and that vehicle, which looks like the China-made golf cart. However, that golf cart was kind of fast, and those Russians actually hit the guy who was waving for them, "Stop! Stop! There are mines ahead!" The full video I published on my Telegram channel. So they hit the guy went to the side of the road, probably totally kaputted, and the vehicle continued their movement but just a few meters ahead, because here's the spot where the mine was located, and on the last frame of the video you will not see it here, there is some sort of the light coming from the spot as well as some of the smoke. The question here is why the Russian driver hit his own sapper. No answer for that. So the Darwin Award goes to all of the persons involved, well, excluding the cameraman, because as we know, cameraman always survives. Oh, what a face. There are some of the politicians, let's say, in the European Union as well. For example, this famous YouTuber Fidias, who really became a member of Parliament of the European Union from Cyprus, shares his own opinion on Ukraine. And actually, it's not just his opinion, but opinion on politicians group. So I want to comment on that and say what is wrong with this opinion. Let's listen to the guy. By the way, I put the reference for his TikTok page over here, and I'll put it in the video description just below to follow the YouTube policy.
There is a crucial aspect on the war in Ukraine that almost nobody's talking about, and that is the actual will of the Ukrainian people. First, I must state that I'm against the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Having said that, I also feel the need to acknowledge that before the war, Ukraine was deeply divided into two groups. In the northern half of the country, the people were mostly Ukrainian-speaking, pro-Western, whereas in the southern half, they were mostly Russian-speaking, pro-Russian.
So it depends on where you live, you were speaking Ukrainian or Russian, but it doesn't mean that the people over here who speak Russian, I'm from this part, I'm from Crimea, I speak Russian. Russian is my mother language, but it doesn't mean that I like Russia a lot and I want that part to be, or all of the Ukraine to be, the part of Russia. This is complete misjudgment of the language and the territory, the country basically. Like for example, in Switzerland, small country, there are 4 of the official languages. Well, the main languages are 3, German, French, Italian. But it doesn't mean that the country just wants to separate itself and join to their neighbors. No. If you speak Russian, it doesn't mean that you're Russian. There are 140 million people, according to statistics, live in Russia, but there are around 300 million people in the world who use the Russian language as the main one, and I'm one of those people. So it's so biased for the language, so let's continue.
You can clearly see the divide in the election result over the past couple of decades, where each one of these groups, the pro-Western and the pro-Russian, was represented by different political parties and different presidential candidates. Now, here is the question: what do people in each one of the regions of Ukraine really want today?
Well, today they want Russia to kaput, to get rid of their own territories, because Russia bombed mostly the Russian-speaking regions. So people in those regions, they do hate Russia nowadays. So before they were more or less okay with Russia, they didn't want to join it. No, yeah, there was the small percentage of the people, separatists, whom Russia sent the weaponry back in 2014 and who started all of that mess. But now after Russia bombed Kharkiv, Mariupol, Kramatorsk and all of the cities, after what Russia done, Ukrainians just hate Russia. And doesn't matter what language you speak and what political force you support. Simply in Ukraine there is no pro-Russian political force any longer because Russia started the full-scale war against Ukraine. If you take for example Yanukovych, he was also by the time the Western-oriented politician. Actually he supported the move of Ukraine towards the European Union, but he was bribed by Russia to cancel that way, and this triggered the revolution in Ukraine back in 2014.
And not just the ones that are living in the free part of the country, but also those in areas occupied by Russia. I believe in the context of any future peace talks, an absolutely essential step should be to organize referendums under the United Nations supervision.
Yeah, useless nation supervision on the occupied territories of Russia. You somehow may organize a referendum for what? According to Ukrainian constitution, there should be no referendums, which include the question of the sovereignty of Ukraine. So the referendum is simply not possible whether the United Nations involved or not. This referendum will have the same legitimacy as the Russian one fake referendum, which they used to annex Ukrainian territories, even the territories where their army wasn't presented. I guess it happened for the first time in the history. So basically it's the proposal to legitimize the Russian presence in Ukraine.
In order to take into account the will and the needs of the people of every region of the country and to ensure a long-lasting peace between Ukraine and Russia. So no more conflicts between these two countries happen in the future. But what are your thoughts about what I am saying?
Well, my thought that it was one of the biggest bullshits that I've heard from the European Parliament room. Yes, now Fidias uses the Parliament as his studio. Fidias, maybe you don't understand and you live in your own bubble, but Russia plans to occupy all of the Ukraine. That was the aim of their attack back in 2022. That's why they went to the capital city of Kyiv to replace the Ukrainian government. They want to take everything by force. Russia is the aggressor and Ukraine does everything to repel the Russian attacks on the front lines. We are not speaking about any sort of the referendums. We will not put the question over Ukrainian sovereignty. Ukraine will never agree with occupation of my homeland Crimea because I was born in Sevastopol. I would never agree that it is the part of Russia, as well as many other people in Crimea. And what Russia did to, for example, Crimean Tatars, the repressions they provide against pro-Ukrainian people or Ukrainian speakers, and after all what they've done to Ukraine, well, it's just unforgivable. If you want the peace in Ukraine, support it from the European Parliament. We need more military support and more economic help for Ukraine. That's the goal. Russia understands the language of power. That's it. But to be fair with this YouTuber and also the member of parliament representative, I want to say that he rose a very important question about the defense of the European Union. Let's listen to his short interview with this guy who is probably also the member of parliament. Sorry guys, I don't know many of the guys in European Parliament. I'm out of that politics, but sometimes, as you see, we review the case, so let's go.
We cannot defend ourselves, we Europeans, because we have a French defense industry, a German defense industry. They don't work together, and that makes it very inefficient and very pricey. A German tank costs by far more than a tank from South Korea or a tank from the United States.
And also, guys, if we don't have a common defense, then our enemies or everyone is not taking us that seriously because they don't see us as a threat. So we don't have leverage and power.
I think for many people it's very obvious.
It was not obvious for me coming here. I don't know anything. So this was a shocking thing that I understood.
You learned that?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's actually what should be done. There should be the common defense system, the common army of the European Union, which will also be the part of NATO. So European Union has its economy, interconnected borders, open, common currency, common parliament, but it doesn't have its own common army. Come on, it's just nonsense. The current situation is very profitable for Russia because each country has its own separate forces and they're not that interconnected, so the response in a possible attack will be very, very slow. So I'm actually surprised that Fidias called that issue in the parliament and published the video about it. Well, at least for this one, well done. By the way, the German Defense Minister Pistorius said that Russia is still capable to produce more weaponry than the European Union produces. Yes, it's hard for Russia to compensate their losses on the front lines, and the quality of their equipment is much lower compared to the European Union made, but still Russia produces the stuff massively, so European Union should be more united over its army, which for now unfortunately doesn't exist, so they need to figure out how to make it. The other political stuff that touches Ukraine, the senator from Republican Party Lindsey Graham called Ukraine to trade its resources for the United States security agreement. He mentioned that Ukraine has lots of the resources underground, including gold, uranium, coal, gas and many others, which altogether might cost up to $7 trillion United States dollars. So he wants the United States companies to get access to everything of that. As an exchange, United States will guarantee the security of Ukraine. Well, even that step, I guess, is better for Ukraine than the physical occupation of the Russian army. But at the same time, it sounds a little fishy, because the last time Ukraine signed the major agreement for the security with the United States of America and gave up its nuclear weaponry, the agreement didn't work. Basically, Ukraine gave up the only security guarantee possible, as we see nowadays, nukes, for the piece of paper which was signed by the United States, UK and Russia. And one of the sides attacked Ukraine, and the other side, as we see, is now very concerned not to escalate the issue and to limit its own military complex. So I honestly do not think that there will be some sort of the prompt proposal from the United States this time to secure Ukraine against Russia. So Ukraine may just trade its own resources for nothing, for one more Budapest Memorandum agreement. Yeah, it's sad to see that our close ally, the United States of America, wants to get some of the profit. Like, it's not about all of the United States, it's about the new team, which will take the White House, Senate, and the House all together. They are businessmen, they think only about the profit, and they don't want to give a lot. Well, at least I say it like that, judging on their rhetorics towards Ukraine. Well, I would agree on Graham's proposal if Ukraine joins NATO. If United States somehow does everything for Ukraine to join NATO and Ukraine joins NATO, okay, green light for the United States companies to do everything they want in Ukraine. Still, as I say to you, it's better than the physical occupation by the Russian army. Even though in Ukrainian constitution, everything under the ground, like all of the resources, belong to people, but we understand also the reality in Ukraine. There are also some of the oligarchs which take all of the factories under control, including the factories which develop and dig out all of the resources, so the funds are not going to the people. After all, well, just the small part of the funds, but the major part goes to wallets of those oligarchs. So for ordinary people, it doesn't really matter where those big funds are going, to oligarchs or to the United States corporations. Yeah, guys, unfortunately, after all, no one cares about the ordinary people. But it's still better to have that system than the war. Alright guys, and now please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. As usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.